The wind tore across the plains, dragging sand and tumbleweed through the skeletons of dead mesquite trees. Inside the shack, a lantern fought to stay lit. Its glow was faint, trembling against the rough boards as if it, too, feared what was coming. She sat on the dirt floor, knees drawn tight to her chest, bare feet, torn dress, eyes rimmed red. She had been told she was safe here, the promise of warmth and food, a roof over her head. But lies come easy to men like him. Boots scraped against the threshold, slow, heavy. He stood in the doorway, broad shoulders filling the frame, the reek of whiskey hanging on his breath. The outlaw. The man folks called her stepfather, though he had never been a father to anyone. "You thought you could run?" His words slurred, dripping poison. She didn't answer. Her hands clutched the blanket tighter. He stepped closer, boards creaking under his weight. "You belong to me, girl. Don't forget that." The lantern popped, throwing his face into sharp relief, eyes dark as coal, teeth yellow in the half-light. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "You said I was safe here." He laughed, the kind of laugh that made the walls feel smaller. "Safe? Ain't no such thing out here." A sudden movement, his hand, calloused and stinking of smoke, ripping the blanket from her shoulders. She scrambled back, hitting the wall, splinters biting her skin. "Get up." "I won't go." Her voice trembled but held something. A spark he hadn't heard before. His boot came down hard, inches from her bare foot. Dust jumped off the floorboards. The lantern shook on its nail. Shadows lunged across the walls like devils dancing in the heat. "You're mine," he growled, leaning close. "Always will be." She stared past him, toward the door, toward the horizon beyond. A silence fell then, thick, breathless, before his hand shot out, grabbing her arm. She gasped, a single sharp "so" unswallowed by the wind outside. The door slammed behind them. The lantern went out, and the night swallowed her cry. Dawn broke slow over the desert, the sun bleeding red across miles of rock and dust. A lone shape staggered through the pale light, her bare feet torn, dress ripped, hair matted with dirt and blood. She walked like someone half dreaming, half dead. Behind her, the shack was a speck on the horizon now. The man inside hadn't bothered to follow. He didn't have to. The desert would finish what he started. Her breath came ragged, shallow. Each step left a darker smear in the sand, her blood soaking into the earth like it had somewhere better to be. The wind howled low through the canyon, whispering things only the dying hear. She stopped at a cluster of cactus. Spines glinted in the morning sun like knives. With shaking hands she broke off a piece, crushed it between her palms, sucked at the bitter drops of water inside. It burned her tongue. She drank anyway. A buzzard circled overhead, lazy, patient. It knew how this story usually ended. She stumbled on, the world tilted. Heat waves shimmered off the rocks, the sky pressed down like a hammer made of fire. Once she heard laughter, low and cruel, riding the wind, his voice. She spun, but there was nothing there, just the empty land and the circling bird. Her knees buckled, sand filled her mouth as she hit the ground. She crawled then, clawing at the dirt like it might give her strength back if she begged hard enough. It didn't. The sun climbed higher, her eyes burned, her lips cracked open, but no sound came out. She thought about water, about shade, about the blanket he had torn from her shoulders, about how cold the desert would be when the night finally came. A rock tore open her palm, blood ran black in the sun. Her body quit just past a dry creek bed. One moment she was crawling, the next she was lying, still, face half buried in sand. The buzzard circled lower. The wind sighed through the canyon, soft now, like it was already saying goodbye. The desert had her. For now, the sun was slipping west when the shadow fell across her body. A rider. Horse-tall, coat dust-caked, reins slack in the man's hand. The girl didn't move. The rider swung down slow, boots hitting the dirt with a weight that said he belonged here, broad shoulders. weather-bitten face carved by wind and time. The rancher. He knelt beside her, 2 fingers to her neck, a heartbeat, faint, stubborn. She was still in the fight. He tipped his hat back, studying the cracked lips, the blood, the sand sticking to her skin. He didn't ask what happened. The desert told enough of the story already. From the saddlebag he pulled a canteen. Cold water touched her mouth. She flinched like she didn't trust it, like she didn't trust anything anymore. Easy. His voice was gravel, low and steady. You drink, or you die. Nothing else out here. Her eyes fluttered open, pupils wild and lost. For the first time in days she saw something besides pain. A man who wasn't him. She drank, slow at first, then greedy, coughing as it burned its way down. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, wrapped her in a wool blanket from his saddle roll. She tensed at the touch until she realized his hands weren't rough. They weren't taking anything from her, just giving her warmth. The horse shifted under their weight as he mounted, one arm holding her close, the other guiding them toward a line of cottonwoods in the distance. Evening bled over the plains. Coyotes started calling somewhere far off. By the time the ranch lights flickered on the horizon, she was half asleep against his chest. He pushed through the cabin door with his shoulder. Wood groaned in protest. Fire snapped in the hearth. The place smelled of coffee and leather and tobacco smoke. Safe smells. He laid her on a narrow bed, covered her with another blanket, checked the bandages he'd wrapped on the ride. She stirred once, whispering something he didn't catch. The rancher sat in the chair by the fire, rifle across his knees, eyes on the door. She was safe. For now. Night draped the plains in black velvet when he came. The outlaw sat his horse on the ridge above the ranch, a cigarette burning between his fingers, eyes cold as creek stones. The wind whipped his coat, carried the reek of whiskey down the slope. From where he sat, the cabin's single lantern glowed warm through the dark, and his mouth twisted in a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Inside, the girl sat near the fire, blanket around her shoulders, sipping coffee with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her here. The rancher leaned against the wall, rifle close, hat low. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. Hoofbeats approached. Slow. Measured. The girl froze. The rancher didn't move. He just set his cup down and stood. The door creaked as it swung open, wind barging in like it owned the place. The outlaw stepped inside, hat pulled low, boots dripping dust on the floorboards. "She's mine," he said, voice rough, empty of anything human. "Always will be." The girl's breath caught. The rancher didn't flinch. "Not tonight," he said, words flat as the desert floor. "Not ever again." The outlaw's hand hovered near his belt, fingers twitching close to the iron on his hip. The room felt small suddenly, hot. The fire snapped loud in the silence. "You want to draw?" the rancher said softly. "You do it outside, not in front of her." The outlaw's grin cracked wider, showing teeth. But he didn't move for the gun. "Not yet." He spat on the floor instead, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "This ain't over," he muttered, voice like a promise carved in stone. He backed out slow, boots scuffing the porch, then swung into the saddle with one smooth motion. The horse carried him back toward the dark hills, the night swallowing him whole. The girl sat shaking, cup clutched tight, eyes on the door. The rancher stayed standing long after the hoofbeats faded. Because men like that didn't vanish, they circled back. Always. The sun rose slow, orange and heavy, spilling over the hills like molten gold. Dust clung to the ranch buildings, glinting in the morning light. The girl moved cautiously outside, blanket around her shoulders, eyes scanning every shadow. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The rancher was already there, leaning against the fence, rifle across his knees. A distant sound of hooves broke the stillness. She froze. A man appeared over the rise, hat pulled low, badge glinting in the sun. Sheriff Kane, tall, weathered, eyes sharp as hawks. the kind of man who could see lies even before they were spoken. "You folks in trouble?" His voice was firm, but not unkind. The rancher nodded, jaw tight. "Been trouble long enough. Stepfather's outlaws came back last night." The sheriff dismounted, boots hitting the ground with authority. He moved toward them, surveying the cabin, the land, the girl who clutched the blanket tighter than ever. "She's bruised," the sheriff said quietly, scanning the girl's arms. "But alive. That counts." The girl's eyes flicked up at him. There was something in his stance, calm, steady, that made her want to believe again. He pulled out a notebook, wrote quickly, then handed the rancher a folded paper. "This is your protection order. They won't get far without me hearing about it." The rancher's hands flexed on the fence. "And if they do, they'll answer to the law. Not you, not him." Sheriff Kane's voice didn't waver. The girl took a hesitant step forward. "You really gonna help me?" The sheriff nodded. "That's what I'm here for." He mounted his horse, eyes sweeping the horizon. "Men like that, they don't stop themselves, but outlaws leave tracks. I follow them." The rancher guided the girl back inside, closing the door against the morning wind. Sunlight spilled across the wooden floor, warming her bruised skin, illuminating hope she hadn't felt in weeks. From the porch, they watched the sheriff ride off, boots stirring dust in a rhythmic beat. His silhouette faded into the distance, but the promise of justice lingered, heavier than the sun, steadier than the wind. The girl leaned against the rancher, voice soft, almost a whisper. "Do you think he'll come back?" The rancher's hand rested on her shoulder, firm, unshaking. "He'll try, but we'll be ready." Outside, the horizon stretched wide and endless, a reminder that even in the harshest lands, there was someone who would ride to protect the innocent. Night fell heavy over the ranch, a blanket of black so thick the stars seemed swallowed. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of sage and danger. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes answered each other with sharp, haunting cries. The girl huddled under the thick wool blanket on the cabin floor. The fire crackled weakly, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of the wind made her heart leap. She didn't need to speak. She knew. He had returned. Outside, torches glowed in the darkness. 3 men moved like wolves, circling the ranch, careful, deliberate. The outlaw at their lead spat to the ground, voice low and rough. "Tonight, we take what's ours." The rancher stepped quietly to the door, rifle in hand, his boots pressed into the dust, silent as the night. He scanned the shadows, eyes narrowing at every flicker of torchlight. A sudden crack. The window shatters. Splinters fly, cutting across the floor. She screams, ducking instinctively, heart hammering. "Stay down," the rancher orders, voice low but sharp. "I've got this." The outlaws move fast. Fire sparks on the porch as the rancher fires, each shot cracking the night. Horses rear, torches bob, shadows leap like living things. Dust swirls thick, catching in the firelight. He yells over the chaos. "You won't take her." The outlaw laughs, a hollow, cruel sound, and slams his fist against the doorframe. "She's mine, all mine." The girl trembles under the blanket, eyes wide, watching the dance of shadow and fire. Her hands clutch the floorboards as splinters rain around her. The rancher's eyes burn with quiet fury. Every move measured, every breath controlled. He pushes back, shot after shot, each one a promise. She will survive tonight. Smoke chokes the air, lanterns sway, and the outlaws hesitate, their confidence faltering against the calm rage of a man protecting what's right. Then, silence. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. The outlaw retreats, dragging his men back into the night, torches extinguished, shadows swallowing them whole. The cabin shivers in the afterglow. The girl leans against the rancher, shaking. "You okay?" he asks, voice gentle now. She nods barely. I think so." He lowers his rifle, scanning the horizon. The night is quiet, but he knows this isn't the end. The wind whispers through the trees, carrying a single truth. Justice may ride slow, but it always rides. The first light of dawn cut across the canyon, painting the world in pale gold and shadow. Hooves thundered against the dry earth. Sheriff Kane and his deputies came riding fast, dust rising behind them in clouds that swallowed the horizon. The rancher stepped into the open, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the ridge. The outlaw and his gang crouched among the rocks, shadows coiling around them like snakes. "This ends now," the sheriff called, voice carrying over the canyon. No hesitation, no mercy. The gang hesitated, glancing at each other. They had counted on fear to do the work for them, but now they saw steel in the eyes of men who would not yield. The rancher's hand tightened on his rifle. He motioned to the girl, who huddled behind the cabin door, blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. She peered out, heart pounding. This was the moment she had feared and hoped for. Gunfire cracked the M.O., Arning, a harsh, jagged rhythm in the still air. Horses reared, dust kicked up into blinding clouds. The outlaw swung his gun, but deputies moved fast, cutting off his escape. The sound of cuffs snapping echoed like hammers striking fate. The girl stepped out, breath caught as the sheriff strode forward, boots kicking up dust. He slammed the outlaw to the ground, cuffs biting tight around wrists that had known nothing but cruelty. The gang scattered, but one by one, deputies rounded them up. The rancher watched quietly, rifle lowered, eyes following the chaos. Justice was swift, final. The outlaw's face twisted, rage and fear mingling, eyes darting from the girl to the rancher to the sheriff. "This ain't over," he spat, but his voice carried no power now. The girl exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, the first real freedom she had known in weeks. Sheriff Kane turned to the rancher. "They won't be bothering you, or her, again." The rancher nodded, voice low. "I reckon not." She took a step forward, unsure, hesitant, then another. Sunlight caught her hair, warming her bruised skin. She looked at the horizon, wide and endless, and felt the weight of fear lift, little by little. The outlaw and his gang were gone, taken by law and by men who refused to let evil roam unchecked. The desert was quiet again, but it had left its mark. The girl knew she was changed forever. The rancher put a hand on her shoulder, steady. "You're safe now." She finally nodded, a small, unbroken spark in her eyes. The world stretched wide and free before them, and for the first time in a long while, hope rode with the dawn.